Well, hello there, and I do hope you're all well. Well, PMQs this week was always going to be an interesting one, but then with the added defection of Christian Wakefield, should I say, from the Conservatives to the Labour, that added extra incentive to our watch, because I was wondering, he's already under massive pressure from that car crash of a pile-up of an interview with Beth Rigby, and now we're hearing about all these letters coming in. He was facing massive pressure. And I thought, how's he going to react to this? And now I'm not going to bore with the reason why I don't do PMQs on this channel anymore, because I think people already know. But I do like listening to the travails of Theo Usherwood, because he'll always have something interesting to say. And he did. He had something very, very interesting to say about why they've invited him to join Labour. And it's very, very interesting. Enjoy.
It is 12:34 and you are listening to James O'Brien and Theo Usherwood on LBC, where we will indulge ourselves a little, I think, every now and then. Political anoraks should be allowed to get really stuck into some Kremlinology, and that is exactly what Theo and I are going to do. Because, Theo, that was... I mean, Keir Starmer made some decent jokes, which I hadn't seen a capacity for before. Preferred the pack in a suitcase one, actually. Yeah. Some suggestion, perhaps, that was a miscalculation, given that it's a deadly serious issue that has got Boris Johnson by the horns. But equally, the idea that when you start laughing, so you jettison the stern moralising, the sort of almost, vicarish disapproval, and you just start laughing, that's when you think the job is done. But then you came up with an even more cryptic theory with regard to the defection of Christian Wakeford or Wakefield? Wakeford, that I think you should share with the...
So what I was trying to get my head around is that if you look at if you've got the fact that Tory MPs are cheering more at the end of it, and you've got this defection of Christian Wakeford to the Labour Party.
They hissed him, we didn't pick up on that because of our microphones, but they were actually actively hissing him, some of the backbenchers, which possibly adds to your theory.
So he crosses the floor, he's now on the Labour benches. Boris Johnson, that was not a disaster for him,
no.
And we'd say it if it was, but it wasn't a disaster for him. He then answers the questions, and then he has his moment. The best bit for Boris Johnson is, we will win back Bury South as a Conservative seat, and we'll win it back under this Prime Minister, i.e. me. I'm going to be the Prime Minister at the next election, and I'm going to win back this seat. So you're then into this position where, if we take it that actually Boris Johnson was strengthened by the defection of Christian Wakeford, because suddenly the 2019 intake looks so isolated in their opposition to the Prime Minister, writing these letters to Sir Graham Brady, and then one of them trots across the floor of the House of Commons to join the other side, which is seen as, in Westminster politics, is seen as such a betrayal that actually it helps Boris Johnson. So then you ask yourself the question, why would Labour do it? Why would they say to Christian Wakeford, OK, come and join our side? Unless they wanted to leave Boris Johnson in place. Unless they thought that actually Boris Johnson remaining as Prime Minister was the person, the Prime Minister that they wanted Keir Starmer to face at the next election. Now, I thought I'm always being very cautious about going down these
speculative routes.
But Theo Bertram, who's very good on Twitter and is a former advisor to Gordon Brown, he said a defection is such an anathema to most MPs that they will recoil from doing anything disloyal. This is good for Johnson. It will pull back MPs from sending letters. It is not good for the Tories. The interests of Johnson and his party have clearly diverged.
Okay.
He is losing seats.
Yes.
So the point is that Boris Johnson, from being the greatest asset to Red Wall Conservative seats, he was the...
I'm just hearing that David Davis has now called for the Prime Minister to resign. What will we do? Play that in a recap. So we'll play you that shortly. Suggest that I wasn't on the order paper. We don't need to make excuses there. It's all right. We're in charge. But that suggests that coming out at 12:30. Well, who knows? We'll listen to it very, very shortly. Does that? I mean, There you go. Turn on a sixpence. Does that change anything?
He's quite enigmatic.
He is, and he's been very strong on the police security and crime bill as well.
And he doesn't necessarily galvanise a huge caucus of MPs.
Just to text quickly, Colin. I think Theo's overthinking it a bit. I don't think you are, for the record. But no, I don't think you are.
Thanks.
I think it's really interesting.
This is the reason I love LBC, you can say something.
I know. Tell me about it. Listen, pals, welcome to my world. Does Davis bring people with him?
He doesn't. No, he doesn't. He's too enigmatic.
He was nearly leader 4
he wasn't
leaders ago. No,
he was a shoo-in for it, but he doesn't. Nobody quite knows. I remember speaking to a very senior colleague of his ages ago, and they were saying we just never know quite where he is on anything. He's almost quite iconoclastic in that he will pick his subjects that he's interested in, and he will pick positions that he believes in, and that makes it quite difficult for Tory MPs to get behind him because they never quite know where they are with him. And remember, back in 2005, he was the shoo-in against David Cameron. He was supposed to win it, and then David Cameron gave that speech to the Tory conference without any notes on the stage and basically stole it from under his nose. So I don't know how serious this intervention, what the implications are, how significant this intervention is if it's David Davis who's saying it. No, fair point.
Just recap briefly on that while we get the tape ready to listen to David Davis and indeed to Boris Johnson's response. Just continue that analysis of why I like that. Oh, we've got it here now. So this is David Davis. I wonder if he used that Oliver Cromwell fight. I bet he did, knowing David Davis. If he doesn't say "in the name of God, go," I'll give you the money myself.
Like many on these benches, I spent weeks and months defending the Prime Minister against often angry constituents. I've reminded them of his success in delivering Brexit and on the vaccine and many other things. But I expect my leaders to shoulder the responsibility for the actions they take. Yesterday, he did the opposite of that. So I'll remind him of a quotation altogether too familiar to him, of Leo Amery to Neville Chamberlain. You have sat there too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go.
Order. Prime Minister. I must say to the right honourable gentleman, I don't know what he's talking about, but what I can tell him, I don't know what quotation he's alluding to that he's referring. But what I can tell him is that I think I've told this House repeatedly throughout this pandemic, I take full responsibility for everything done in this government and throughout the pandemic.
He wasn't expecting that, was he?
No, he got very close to the end of the session, and David Davis will therefore become the first Conservative MP to have told Boris Johnson to his face, on the record, to quit as the Prime Minister.
Is that a Geoffrey Howe moment?
Well, he's not the former Chancellor, is he?
No, he's former Secretary of State for Brexit.
It's not quite the same.
No.
but it isn't. I mean, it's not.
Well, you don't have to be Geoffrey Howe for it to be a Geoffrey Howe moment, Theo. It's just a prominent Conservative cabinet level calling for the current Prime Minister in his own party to go. Can you think of another time that's happened?
Well, it was Geoffrey Howe.
Yeah.
No, so I guess it's Geoffrey Howe moment.
This is what they tune in for. 12:42 is the time, and we're now getting a statement on the latest COVID updates. We may as well see what that involves as well.
Now, yeah, that was an interesting speculation. It was once something I really thought of, but I thought, yeah, maybe he might have a point. And even James said, I don't think you are overthinking this. And because I thought, why are you doing this? For me, I first thought my brain was thinking, I'm wondering if he's done this to really, really piss off those on the left. Because let's be honest, it don't matter if Keir Starmer grows a beard, starts wearing a donkey jacket and buys an allotment to grow his unfeasibly large marrow. Those on the Corbyn side, they're never going to back him anyway. So I just felt for a minute, has he done that just to really, really piss him off? I don't know, but then it came to the COVID recovery and what the plans are for the future. Got Temple promotion, and he was just sort of like trying to ring out his greatest hits and ignore his abject failures and ignore those who helped him to get his successes through. And let's just say, our Desmond Swains slide across the front row with his fist up, like going, yes, thinking he'd scored a hat trick, because now we seem we're getting rid of the face snappers. Didn't go unnoticed with James and Theo.
And as ever, if Ian Bradford says anything remarkable, Theo or Sheila will bring it to your attention shortly. But I thought we should allow ourselves a couple of minutes to look back. I mean, listen, this is a little bit petty, but that line that Leo Amery said to Neville Chamberlain on, I think, May 7, 1940, it was 3 days before Churchill became Prime Minister. In the name of God, go quoting Oliver Cromwell, as I suggested. Didn't Boris Johnson write a biography of Winston Churchill?
Yes.
And he doesn't know what, for my money, was the line that opened the door of Downing Street to Winston Churchill.
Yes, but I think he was referring to, when he replied to David Davis, and this might be a different interpretation, he was referring, when he said he didn't know what he was talking about, to David Davis.
No, he said, I'm not aware of that quotation. That was the second bit.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
There we go.
And guess what's trending alongside the words
Howe.
David Davis, Theo Usherwood?
Jeffrey Howe.
That was Fantasy Island, that last bit from Boris Johnson. It was just...
So it's a reversion.
152,000 dead people, and they're going to play the idea that he's played a blinder through. Well, it's like Brexit happening all over again. It's like, here is reality, and here is what Boris Johnson wants you to believe.
So we're effectively, James, we're back to Plan A before we entered into the COVID winter plan.
And Plan B would not have got through were it not for the support of Keir Starmer's Labour Party. He always likes to gloss over. So there wouldn't have been and then, of course, you go back to Christmas of 2020. By the end of January, after Boris Johnson botched that, we had briefly the highest death toll in the world.
You know, the Prime Minister needs...
But Desmond Swain won't have to wear a mask anymore.
But he needs political capital. The Prime Minister right now is desperate for some political capital.
How many of these crazy backbenchers... Sorry to talk over you, but I'm conscious of the time. How many of these crazy backbenchers really do think that face masks are a bridge to die on?
Well, I think you need to draw perhaps the distinction between the crazy backbenchers. I mean, you heard there from Theresa May saying you need to open up quicker because of the aviation industry in my constituency, which is, of course, Maidenhead. So there is a breadth of opinion, and yes, there are those who don't want to see very pleased, and you heard them almost screaming in delight as he announced.
Desmond Swain looked like he'd won the FA Cup. Why? It's a face mask, and I worry about the schools. I hope they're right. I hope that there's not it just seems an unnecessary risk. It always has. I suspect Sheila will be turning her attention to some of this territory in the coming hours. Theo, you played a blinder, as ever, today.
That's quite right.
But it was a Jeffrey Howe moment.
But yeah, I found that really interesting one that James picked up on. That he didn't recognise that quote. This is a guy who wrote a book about his hero, Winston Churchill. So that was... very, very weird. Now, did he write it, or did he get somebody else to write it for him? Because he's a lazy fucker, isn't he? So that was interesting. But, yeah, that Desmond Swain bit, these lunatics, they seem to think that face masks are a hill to die on. Now, even when the restrictions are lifted, when it comes to public transport, I'm still going to be wearing a face mask because I just think it's the right thing to do. That's just me anyway, because that's my British common sense, but as we all know, my British common sense will be totally different to that guy who shoved a flare up his arse. So, well, who knows what will happen. But anyway, a weird PMQs this week, wasn't it? What do you guys think? Right, I shall leave the video here until the next time. I shall bid you farewell and take care.